All right, everyone. So in this lesson, we are going to talk about 30, 60, 90 triangles. Now, we're going to go in the same process as we did yesterday. So here in this triangle, I'm going to draw an altitude. Okay? So now we have a 90-degree or a right triangle here. So I'm going to redraw that one of those triangles within there here. So we're going to have this triangle. We get a 90-degree angle. This is 60 degrees. And since I drew that altitude straight down there, if we did 180 minus 90 minus 60, we would get 30. But you would notice, and since we cut that straight down the center, this is an equilateral triangle, we're kind of like cutting everything in half at this point. So we know that those two segments would be congruent, so this would be 4 versus 8. This here would be 8, and then we're going to need to find this side length here. So we're going to go ahead and do the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, so x squared plus 4 squared equals 8 squared. Plus 16 equals 64. When we do 64 minus 16, we are going to get x squared equals 48. When we go ahead and take the square root of that, we're going to have 48 over here. We know we can divide that by 2, and we'll get 24. And then we can do 4 and 6. 2 and 2, and then 2 and 3. We have a pair of 2's here, pair of 2's. So we are going to get here x equals 4 square root 3. So this side will be 4 square root 3. Okay, so then let's go ahead. Let's do the next one here. So let's say that we have our sides as variables. Okay, so 2n, 2n, 2n. We're going to do the same process. We're going to drop down our altitude. We're going to draw our triangle separate. Okay, so we get our 90, our 60, and our 30. We know that's divided into 2, right? So each part is going to be n and n. So we're going to have an n here. This is 2n. And we're going to find this side here. So if you can go ahead, we're going to do x squared plus n squared equals 2n squared. Now go ahead and pause the video here and try and go ahead to do the Pythagorean theorem here to see what we are going to get for x. Alright, so you should notice here when we go ahead and 2n squared, you're going to get 4n squared. Subtract n squared over, we'll get 3n squared. When you take the square root of both sides, these cancel. 3 stays under the radical. N squared, we're going to take the n out front. So we're going to get x to equal n root 3. Now I want you guys to notice here, n square root 3. All of these have an n. All of these have an n. Okay? And the only thing that's different is now comparing it to here. If we did n, okay, n across from the 60 degrees, you're going to multiply that by the square root of 3. If we look at the hypotenuse, what happens here? N times 2. Well, that means we did 4 times 2 to get ourselves the 8. Okay, so for a 30, 60, 90 triangle, it says here, our hypotenuse is going to be 2 times the short leg. The short leg is across from the smallest angle, which is the 30 degrees. The long leg, that is going to be across from the 60 degrees. Okay, the long leg is going to be the square root 3 times the short leg. So over here, we're going to have across from the 30, I'm going to put a box again just because I don't want to have any x's. Across from the 60, we'll have the box square root 3. And then across from our 90 degrees, that's going to be our 2. And of course, I'm going to put the box. I mean, you can put x's or y's or whatever variable you want. I just don't want you to get confused when there's multiple variables missing in a problem. Alrighty, so going ahead, let's do some examples. So take a look here. We have some examples of our 30, 60, 90 triangles. Across from our 60, we have x. This is going to be our 30 degrees, which means across from our 30 is going to be our box. And if, honestly, I would get in the habit, let's do this. So let's do 60 and 30. And across from here, do box root 3, and then 2 with our box. Just to have that visual of copying it down so you know exactly when you're looking at the picture what to do. So this is the shortest side. So across from the 60 is going to be whatever that 30 is times root 3. So we're going to get here 8 square root 3. Okay, so then this one is when you do 2 times whatever you get here, right? So this is, I'll put the box root 3. So we're going to get here 2 times 8. So we're going to get y is 16. Okay. All right, next one here. Looks like we have this across the 60-degree angle is 9 root 3. So this is the short leg. The short leg equals root 3. I'm sorry, the short leg is 9. And then here, this would be that 2 times the short leg. So we're going to get here 2. I want to put a box actually. 2 times 9, which we'll get is 18. So we're going to get here 9 root 3, and 18. Okay. Over here, across from our 60 degrees, we have 12, which that's a little strange here. So now we know that it's supposed to be box root 3, right? So we're going to go ahead when we are across that 60 degrees, okay? And we need to find the short leg. So when we're going from the long leg to the short, we are going to divide by the square root of 3 because we need to go ahead. And what I mean by long to short, this is the long, this is the short, right? And this is the hypotenuse here. So when we're going into that, we're going to go ahead and say, okay, we're divided by 3. So the square root 12 divided by the square root of 3 equals, actually we're going to multiply by the square root of 3 to rationalize that. And then we're going to go ahead here and get 12 root 3 over the square root of 9. This reduces, so we're going to get 4 root 3. So then here is going to be 4 square root 3. We're going to go ahead and do 2 times 4 square root 3 to get our hypotenuse, which will just be 8 root 3. Okay. Now, I do know that the way I'm explaining it can be a little confusing because I'm not referencing anything as an x, okay, so as the missing variable. So in the next examples, I'm actually going to reference our triangle instead of using the boxes as an n. So, for example, here's our 60, here's our 30, and here's our 90. What I'll do is I'll represent them as a variable so it's a little easier to understand if this is going to help you. If this is more confusing, you can go ahead and kind of skip through my explanations and kind of check your answers as you go through. Okay, so here this will be 2n. And I'm just taking the same exact variables that we had in the beginning of our notes. So taking a look here, across from our 30 is our n, quote unquote. Okay, so here this is supposed to be n root 3. So taking a look here, the n is going to be the 9, right? Because that's the number out front. So x will equal 9. And then here we're going to have to do 2 times n or 2 times the box, whatever you prefer to think about it as, times 9, and we'll get 18. So y equals 18. All right, this guy here, across from our hypotenuse is when we do 2 times n. So what you can do here is you can say, okay, well, I know it's supposed to be 2 times n. That's what this side is supposed to be. But I have this here. I need to figure out what n is. What you can do, and probably the easier way to think about it, is if you go ahead, you say, I know the side equals 2n, but I'm also told it equals 12 root 3, the actual distance. So go ahead and set an equal and solve it like an equation. When you do that, you're going to get n equals 6 root 3, and that means your n, your short side, is 6 root 3. And then over here, you're going to have 6 root 3 times root 3, because this is your n root 3 side across from your 60 degrees. So then here you're going to get 6 square root 9, which is going to be 6 times 3, which is going to be 18. Okay. All right. Next one here. So I'm going to go about the same process to do this one. So across from the 60, again, this is your n root 3. Across from your 30 is going to be your n. This is your 2n. So take that 24. You know it equals 2n because that's the side it's supposed to be, 2n. Oops, I put an x. 2n. So then here I'm going to divide by 2, and n will equal 12. That means this length is 12. And then I'm going to plug in 12 there, so this one will be 12 root 3. So x equals 12 and y equals 12 root 3. Okay. The next one here, going ahead taking a look, we know that this whole side is 20. But remember, as a whole triangle, all of these are all the same degree, which means they're equilateral. So this side is 20, and the full side here is also 20. But we know since we drew that altitude in here, it's going to be divided by 2. So this is 10, and this is 10. So looking at the individual triangle, we know y equals 10. We know this here is our 30-degree angle. So that means this side here is our n. Across from the 60 is our n root 3. And across from our 20 is our 2n. So I'm going to take that 20. You can divide that by 2. If you do that, 2n equals 20, n equals 10. Well, wait a second. We knew that. We got that already. We figured it out, right? So just kind of tying together how things are kind of flowing together and what we know. So then we know then for this side here, our x, well, that's just going to be x equals 10 root 3. All right, so this question here, we've kind of have a lot going on. So you can see that we clearly have 3 different triangles, 3 right triangles. So it's that segment, seg 1, seg 2, leg 1, leg 2, altitude. We have all of those. But the big thing is I want you to notice is we only know this side, okay? So I want you to think of it first as a big right triangle, right? Because we know this is 90, this is 60, because if that's 30, we know that that's 60 up there. So across from here, this would technically be that n, right? So across from the 60 is when we take that n times root 3. So this will be 4 times the square root of 3. Oopsies, times the square root of 3, which would be 4 square root 9, 4 times 3, and then finally we'll get this length to be 12. So z would equal 12. Awesome. So I'm just going to put equals 12. Okay, cool. And then across from our hypotenuse, well, our hypotenuse would be n times 2. So we know our n is 4 root 3. Multiply that by 2, we're going to get this length to be 8 root 3. So equals 8 square root 3. So y equals, okay. And then, let's take a look here. We know, oh, I'm sorry, not y. Y is not 8 root 3. It's the whole thing is 8 root 3. So our hypotenuse is 8 root 3. Okay, so we know a hypotenuse, we know some legs, but we don't know the altitude yet. Okay, so let's take a look here and let's think about what we're doing. Let's look here then let's look at this triangle. And a lot of this is kind of just looking at the triangles and trying to interpret what it's saying, okay? So here, I notice, and you can honestly even start the other triangle, whichever one you're comfortable with. I know this angle would be 60 degrees because of the 30. So if we're looking at the pink triangle as a whole, across from the 90 degrees, that's that 2n, okay? That's a 2n. So I'm actually going to do 12 equals 2n. N is going to equal 12, okay? So taking a look here, that means across from our 30 degrees, well, that's just going to be 12. Oh, wait, I meant to put 6. That's supposed to be a 6. That's going to be a 6. So then we'll get W is 6, so W equals 6. And then from here, oopsies, from here, across from our 60 degrees is going to be when we're going to have that n root 3. So we're going to get here 6 times the square root of 3. So y equals 6 root 3. So then if we go ahead and think about this here, we know to get the hypotenuse, that is equal to y plus x. We know the hypotenuse is 8 root 3. We know y is 6 root 3 plus x we don't know. So I'm going to subtract the 6 root 3. And we're just going to get x equal 2. All right, and in this question number 9, you really could have started at any of the different points. You could have done the other triangle that I didn't reference too much of, where we know the 60 degrees in the top right corner there. Either one would have been fine. So if you guys can go ahead, your homework here is your day 2 homework. You're going to be doing a whole bunch of right triangles with 30, 60, 90. They will be more like the examples here above and these ones here, and then some of these ones as well. So you're not going to have one too crazy like 9. It'll be more like these examples here. So if you have questions, just let me know.